you cannot be a successful entrepreneur, in my opinion, and have a balanced life. You can't.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Pick Now podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Munn. Today, I've got Ron Diamond, the founder and CEO of Diamond Wealth. Ron, welcome to the podcast. You've had, from founding your own hedge fund to now doing a lot of work in the family office space. You've had quite the journey, and look forward to diving into that with you today.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me.
So, Ron, you started out as a did you found the hedge fund? Did you, let's go way back to your beginnings. Why a hedge fund? How'd you get into it? What were some of those tough choices that you made at that point?
So it started, my plan was, I was not planning to start a hedge fund. What happened was I had graduated from Northwestern University in 1987, and I got a wonderful job at Drexel Burnham. Drexel was like Goldman on steroids. It was the most profitable firm on Wall Street. I was working with Michael Milken, and it was just the dream job until it wasn't. 2 years after I started, Drexel imploded and went bankrupt. And I'm in the room when Fred Joseph, who was the CEO of Drexel, says we're going bankrupt. Now,
wow.
It was a surreal moment.
So Ron, can you give me, because I know there was the big crash in '87, right?
Yeah.
So what were the events that led to Drexel going belly up?
Rudolph Giuliani.
Okay.
He was very political, and there was a year when making a ton of money was Milken made like $550 million and there was a whole bunch of things, and I don't want to get into too many details, but there's a confluence of events that happened that caused Drexel to go down. Particularly, Giuliani wanted to run for office, and I'm in the room. I'm 24, and I'm in the room with people in their 60s and 70s, and you typically didn't see white men cry in the because it was mostly white men in that time, but that you did there, and. I'm in the room. I remember there's almost imprinted on me. I remember the woman with she had a big green brooch on her shirt. I remember the overweight guy who was sweating all the way through his clothes. I remember scents. I remember this guy with really small glasses, like tears pouring down his eyes. So it was really imprinted upon me. And I didn't really, for me, I just lost a great job. I didn't have any stock options. And a lot of these people lost most, and some lost all of their money.
Right, because their life's work, right?
People thought Drexel could never go up, right? And can never go down. So they put all their money in Drexel stock. And so my takeaway from that was that I would always be loyal to people, like ridiculously loyal to people, but I would never, ever, ever be loyal to a company. Because if this could happen to Drexel, this could happen to any firm. And fast forward, look at Bear Stearns, look at Lehman Brothers, look at Kidder Peabody, look at DLJ, look at Salomon Brothers, look at Alex Brown, Kidder Peabody. All of these firms are no longer in existence. So I was very disillusioned, and my goal was not to start a hedge fund. I barely knew what a hedge fund was when I first graduated from Northwestern, but I was so disillusioned. I moved back to Chicago. And I started a hedge fund because I was disillusioned, and if this could happen to Drexel, it could happen to any company. So I figured, I'll start my own company. Now I was in way over my skis. I didn't really fully.
Yeah. How do you start a hedge fund at the age of 24?
It sounds a lot more glamorous than it is. All I did was I went to a bunch of friends and family. I raised about $2 million in increments of $100,000. And raise some money. I was, again, in way over my skis, but I think that's probably true with a lot of entrepreneurs. You kind of do something and you're like, wait a minute, I forgot. I should have known how to do that. So fast forward, I was lucky. I think any entrepreneur and again, I don't consider myself an entrepreneur. I would consider myself I was forced into it, but we had a certain element of luck, and I think that's true with any entrepreneur who's had some success. In the '90s, we were pretty good stock pickers, and it wasn't that hard to pick stocks that went up because most of the stocks, or the majority of the stocks, went up. So we had tailwinds, and I grew it. I grew it from 2 million to about 300 million, which back then, this was very early in the hedge fund space. This is when people didn't even know what a hedge fund was.
Yeah.
And people used to think hedge funds are great because you can make money if the stock market goes up or down, and that's not true. It was basically you're good at one or the other. We were pretty good at one. We never had huge returns, but we beat the S&P 10 out of 10 years. Mm-hmm. And in 2000, about 10 years after I started, when I had about 300 million under management, I felt the market was overvalued. And if the market did in fact go down, I would not be making money for my clients or me. So I told them that. And again, we had a great run, great 10-year run. And so I sold my firm to a market neutral firm, which was better suited to make money in a down market. And then I stayed on board 6 months, kept 100% of the assets on board, got my liquidity, and then I started investing. And what I did and what I do is I put together a syndicate of about 124 family offices. I mean, it wasn't 124 then. It started with 2 or 3. But I've now got 124 families between 250 million to 30 billion. And we invest together in the private market. So that's private equity, venture capital, real estate credit, sports teams, et cetera. And, we don't charge anything for it, but I'm not doing it for selfless purposes or selfishly because I can't afford to put in $100 million per deal. Now I can. So I call it first call alpha.
That's awesome. And so what was it that led you, like if I'm thinking about the math here, you're still a pretty young guy when you're kind of shutting down this $300 million operation or, selling it to somebody else. Why the family office? Like what made the family office space the next move for you?
Again, I'd love to say that it was like some well thought out vision. Like most things in life, it was serendipitous. I kind of fell into it. I mean, in the '90s, they used to call them rich people, and now they call them family offices. So that's kind of how I got into the family office space.
So these were people who had already invested with you?
Yeah. Most when I started, because we had a good track record. Yes, I started out with because we did quite well for them. So I had a lot of people who invested, and again, the term family office, I didn't even know what a family office was. And what's interesting is with family offices, it's not like I had a goal to get into the family and be an expert in the family office space because, again, I didn't even know what it was. What happened was, only 25% of family offices make it to the second generation, and 10% make it to the third, and 5% make it to the fourth. And so the model doesn't work, even though everyone hears the term family office all the time. And it's very fragmented, very siloed, very inefficient. I'd say 85-90% of the family offices shouldn't exist. They should be part of a multifamily office, just my opinion, and I think I'm right. It's really a model that just doesn't work. And so I got into the space because the people who I was investing with, who were rich people, who are now called family offices. And then I really saw a market that is very fragmented, very siloed, and very inefficient. And I don't care if you're making widgets or you're running a hedge fund or you're making batteries. That's a good model to be in a business. So I also looked at the economics. There's currently $10 trillion in capital in family offices. And to kind of put that in perspective, there's roughly 6.5 trillion globally in the entire hedge fund universe. So again, this is bigger than all the hedge funds combined. But over the next 20 years, we're about to experience the largest transfer of wealth in history. There's $124 trillion that's moving downstream from the baby boomers to the next gen. So it'll be the largest transfer of wealth ever. So this market, which is big, is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I find it fascinating because I think as private equity and venture capital disrupted the public markets in the late 80s, I believe family offices are going to disrupt private equity going forward. We can get into that down the road.
Yeah, let's take a step back and so when you use the term family office, I've seen you talk in other contexts about like even now, like you ask people what a family office is, and you get different answers from different people. what is your definition of a family office, and when does someone usually adopt one? If that's the if it's is it on an exit from a business? Is it some other circumstance? Like, walk us through that.
Yeah, typically it's from an exit from a business. And right now, the problem is, so I put together a family office initiative at Stanford, and I helped with a couple other people put together one at University of Chicago booth, because there's no playbook. So what
Uh-huh.
happens is, it's usually after somebody has a liquidity event, you sell your company for money, a lot of money, and then you're like, okay, I'll start a family office because that's the thing you're supposed to do.
That's what you do, yeah.
But there's no model. And how much money do you need to have a family? I mean, you could sell your widget company for $50 million, and that's a lot of money. It's just
Yeah.
not even close to enough to have a family office. In order for it to make economic sense to have a single family office, you need a bare bones minimum of 500 million if you're going to invest in the direct deals. If you're going to invest direct in the deal team. And so people sell their company for $50, $100 million, and I'll start a family office. It's just not enough to have it, right?
And what are they thinking? Do they just have some like family friend who says, "Hey, let me start a family office for you"? And
they don't, right? And if you do the math and you reverse engineer it, they're much better going. The growth is going to really be in the multifamily offices. So I sat on the board of Crescent, which is now a $75 billion multifamily office, and basically this is the area that's going to really grow. They cater primarily from net worths of $10 million up to $400-500 million.
Okay.
And if you do the math, you could see, rather than paying for your own accountant, your own lawyer, your own admin, your own finance people, you're splitting it with 20, 30, 40 families. So it's cheaper. So it's not yours bespoke, but it's a lot more efficient to do it. So one of the things is, what happens is people have a liquidity event. Everybody in your area hears about it. And the first thing they do is start investing, which is the last thing they should do. Because you're good at creating widgets, or, Ty Warner is a perfect example. Ty is, I know him quite well. He's started Beanie Babies, and Beanie Babies was a phenomenon, and he was a brilliant, brilliant businessman.
Yeah.
And he sold the company for billions of dollars, and then he tried to buy the Four Seasons, and he got clobbered. So what happens is, you've got a lot of money in very inefficient hands, driven primarily by ego and lack of knowledge. And that's why the family office market's grown. I think it's going to morph and change. And I think that the reason I created the program at Booth and at Stanford is because there has to be a model to say, okay, this is how much money you need to have a family office. The first thing you should do is not invest. You should talk to an estate planning attorney, which is the boring stuff, like the foundation of a house.
Yeah.
Then you should deal with governance, then next gen, then succession, then all of these boring things. Then maybe a year after you have a liquidity event, then you could start investing. So I want to create a playbook to show you how you should do it. But what happens is, you have a liquidity event, all your friends and people in the community know it, and they, hey, you want to put a couple $1 million into this deal? You smart private equity guy, whatever. That's the last thing. So it's done backward. Your estate planning attorney, you need the structure first.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because it aligns with some things that I see from my clients who have gone through exits. Not necessarily that they jump right into like, I'm going to have a family office, or I'm going to be on boards, or I'm going to do, I'm going to invest. But it's this almost withdrawal, I would call it. Like, they've been in the middle of the action for so long that when that goes away, it's like, I gotta find something to do. I gotta find something to do. And so they like jump into something just to kind of keep that adrenaline rush going, instead of stepping back and doing the things that you're talking about. It's like, wait a minute, we just had a nice event here. Let's get our ducks in a row. Let's get the foundation set before we decide what to do next.
Yeah, and again, it's very easy to come into a lot of money in a short period of time, and all of a sudden everyone's giving you high fives, and you want to start investing that. I get it, but it's really not the way to do it. And that's one of the reasons why only 25, the model doesn't work. Again, the statistics are 25, 10, and 5 make it the second, third, and fourth generation.
So in the entrepreneurs that you see kind of getting into that space and having these events, I'm not sure, at what point you get to know them, whether you know them as they're running their companies before they exit, or it's after that point. But how much of the, the big exit is luck?
Well, I would say certainly in my case, it was a large part of it, because if I ran
Mm-hmm.
my hedge fund in a different decade, I'd like to say I would have done just as well, but I wouldn't have. I mean, I'd be
Yeah.
lying.
Yeah.
So I think timing and luck is a big part of most entrepreneurs. I mean, and a lot of people have trouble, admitting it or saying that. But yeah, I had
Right. Which leads to oh, well, if I'm good at this, then I'm good at running the Four Seasons.
right. What happens is that because you're good at creating widgets or whatever you make or do, doesn't mean you're a good investor. It's a totally different thing. Because you can make widgets doesn't mean you can invest in private equity or venture capital or real estate. They're completely different skill sets.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. What were some of the hardest calls that you had to make? If I know you've resisted the label of entrepreneur, but to me, what you're doing looks like a lot like entrepreneurship, from the early years, even now. What are some of the more difficult calls you've had to make as an entrepreneur?
Well, I want to push back on that a little bit, because I consider myself more of a wantrepreneur. Like, an entrepreneur is somebody who would literally risk everything. They can go. So when I started the hedge fund and I'm raising money, if it didn't work out, and there was a possibility it didn't work out,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be losing. I invested other people's capital, so I wouldn't be losing. I didn't risk everything, so I didn't have to worry about where am I going to live, how's it going to, am I going to go bankrupt? I mean, the
Yeah.
entrepreneurs I run a family office group in in Chicago for Tiger 21, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for entrepreneurs. It is extraordinarily difficult to be an entrepreneur. If you're working for a company, your bad day is your boss gets pissed off at you, your coworker is trying to elbow you out of it, whatever. If you're an entrepreneur, your bad days are, I might not be able to make payroll, or can I exist, or this big company with 10 times the amount of money is going to come in and they're trying to wipe me out. So what's interesting is, and I think that people, when they're starting out, really have to understand, they have to do a gut check and understand themselves. I just did a keynote for a men's mental health initiative, and it was geared towards entrepreneurs. And the amount of stress, anxiety, depression, and even suicide amongst entrepreneurs is off the charts. So there's not qualities like you have to have A, B, C skill sets to do it.
Yeah.
It's the stomach. You have the mentality and the temperament to do it. It's hard, but it's not hard. It's not just hard because it's hard to start a business. It's hard mentally, and it's hard emotionally. And I don't know the statistics, but I'm sure there's more divorces. I'm sure there's a lot of things with entrepreneurs, because, Reid Hoffman said something, who's the founder of LinkedIn, and I agree with him. You cannot be a successful entrepreneur, in my opinion, and have a balanced life. You can't. Now, eventually you can, but when you're starting out, you're all in. So if you want to have a work-life balance and that kind of stuff, don't be an entrepreneur. So I encourage a lot of people that say they want to start their own companies to really think about, not is their idea great, because there's a lot of great ideas, or can they execute? There's many can execute, but your low lows are going to be lower than anything you've experienced in your life. And your high highs will also be higher. And you have the temperament to do that. And most people don't think that through. And again, certainly I didn't. So I never consider myself an entrepreneur, because I never risked everything, nor did I ever risk everything. So in between, what I call.
Yeah, well, and I think there's a range, and I appreciate your distinction, and I do wonder, and neither you nor I is really qualified to opine on this, but it does seem to me like the capacity to weather those ups and downs and even be drawn toward them is the same thing that makes, like, you take an entrepreneur, someone who's wired to be an entrepreneur, and put them in a 9 to 5 job, and they go crazy. So it's almost like I wonder what is it that entrepreneurship makes you mentally unstable or is it that the people who have that wider range are drawn to entrepreneurship because of the things that it gives them that a 9 to 5 occupation doesn't?
Yeah, I mean, look, some people are wired. They just don't want to have a boss. They want to do their own thing. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for them. But what they need to understand is, do they have the stomach for it? It's not a question, do they have the intelligence for it? Do they have enough money to start the business, et cetera? It's, do they have the stomach for it? And for most people, the answer is no. For some people, the answer is yes. And those are the people who should be entrepreneurs. But there's a lot of people who are entrepreneurs right now who probably shouldn't be. Not that they're not smart or qualified or whatever. If they have a bad day, again, depression, anxiety, stress, suicide, the divorce rates, people gaining 50 pounds, getting out of shape, it's off the charts with entrepreneurs. So you just have to really have a gut check and think about it. And what I would encourage people to do is talk to a bunch of entrepreneurs, those who succeeded and those who haven't succeeded, and talk to them. If you just talk to the people who are uber successful, it's going to look like, oh, well, why wouldn't I do this, right? And
I look like I was going to lose everything, and then things turned around.
It's a very small percentage of the people who really succeed. And so I encourage younger people to talk to people who've succeeded, and also people who didn't succeed. And if you don't succeed, you're not a failure. It's just your business failed. And what happens is a lot of people take that personally as like, I'm a failure. No. That business didn't work. You're not a failure. And they take it totally personally. So a lot of their self-worth is tied up in their business. And if they do great and sell it for a lot of money, they get a big ego. And I get that. And conversely, if they don't do great and they do poorly or it fails, their self-esteem goes down, where it should just be this, maybe they were too early, or maybe the market wasn't ready for their product. And to disassociate yourself and to distance yourself, it's not, your net worth is not your net worth. Your net worth is not who you are, and
your personal worth, right? Yeah.
People need to understand that. So I think there'll be a lot more studies done on this. But being an entrepreneur, I have a tremendous amount of respect for people who've been entrepreneurs and are successful. It's just hard.
Yeah. So for you, one of the things that jumps out at me, you mentioned early when you were building the hedge fund, is at the $300 million mark, you thought it was overvalued. You thought it was a good time to sell, to bring in this partner who would manage a down market better than you were equipped to. How did you know that? Like, what was the process that you went through to say, okay, now's the time, as opposed to, I think I can ride this out a little longer, or like, because that was a big moment, Ron.
No, that's a good question. And again, I'd like to say I had the fortitude to know that the market was here, and there's an element of luck. And I wasn't right. I mean, after we sold, the market did go up before it did go down. I just looked at trends, and I looked at valuations, and I just saw that they were trading at kind of crazy multiples. So nobody's smart enough to know when, like, I've never bought a stock at the bottom, and I've never sold a stock at the top. I just try to stay between the 20-yard lines. I just knew that I could never say in 2000 when I sold it that this is the year to sell it. I could just say that over the next couple of years, the chances of the market going down, in my opinion, based on what I understood, was much greater than going up. And because of that, it would be a good time to sell. So again, timing, luck played a big role in this.
How do you, it seems like a lot of entrepreneurs kind of fall to the temptation to get a little greedy, to ride it a little longer than they should ride it. It seems like you are someone who doesn't succumb to those emotional ups and downs as much as others might. How do you do that?
one of the things that I've learned, I have a wonderful life with what I do for a living because I love what I do. And if you love what you do,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're an artist, a piano player, or a lawyer, doctor, whatever, that's really what you want. You want to find an industry or an area that you really love. And I love what I do. Um, I think that a lot of people come into starting a business with unrealistic expectations, and if your goal is to get rich. Now, entrepreneurs, many of them, most of them,
Mm-hmm.
do want to get wealthy, but if that's your sole goal, it's very hard. And if there were, I invest alongside multi-billion dollar families.
Yeah.
If there were a direct correlation between wealth and happiness, I would tell everybody, including my kids, work as hard as you can and just become as rich as you can. But there's not. The
Yeah.
amount of from a socioeconomic standpoint, the amount of depression and anxiety and stress, it's everybody. And I see a lot of miserable billionaires, and I see some people who have barely enough to get by who are very happy. And if your goal in life is to live a fulfilled, meaningful life, I don't consider the miserable billionaire successful. I consider
Yeah.
that person a failure. Um,
Yeah.
Yet I consider somebody who doesn't have nearly as much money, but lives true to be true to thyself, as Shakespeare said.
Yeah.
They're real. Um, it takes a while to get to know yourself, and sometimes it
Uh,
takes 30 years, sometimes it takes 60 years, sometimes it takes 70 years. And once you
yeah.
kind of understand who you are and what and you learn through trial and error, then you kind of know how you're wired. And I think that to me I don't consider somebody who's worth $2 billion more successful than somebody who's worth $1 billion. What if he had 3
Mm-hmm.
divorces and he gained 50 pounds and he doesn't talk to his children? To
Right.
me, that's like the most important, family's most important part of life.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you think about what you do and how that aligns to your meaning and purpose and legacy, however you want to put it, Ron, like how did you come to doing what you do?
Well, kind of my North Star is, we have a syndicate of investors, and these are, again,
Mm-hmm.
250 million to 30 billion, and we invest together. Um, but my North Star is not, if I'm worth X, I've done really well. And if I'm worth X plus Y, I've done even better. And if I'm worth X plus Y plus Z, I've done even better. My North Star is, at some point, you, 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 you have enough money. You can't
Mm-hmm.
spend all the money. And
Right.
then if you're a slave to it, that's like the worst thing in the world. And I see a lot of people doing that. And I think you get to a point in life. So my North Star is right now in the U.S., the wealthy are getting wealthier and the poor are getting poorer, and that's a bad thing from a societal standpoint, because
Absolutely.
without
Yeah.
sustainable middle class, bad stuff happens. Now, my the
Your dog agrees, by the way.
the good thing is that, in my opinion, I think that while the wealthy are getting wealthier and the poor are getting poorer, and that's a very bad thing from a societal standpoint, my North Star is I think a lot of these family offices are going to solve a lot of these real world problems. And I'll give you a couple examples. My dad passed from prostate cancer when he was 57, and
Wow.
he was my hero, and it was so young, and it was tragic. He got prostate cancer, was diagnosed at 52, and he went to 3-4 doctors and got second, third, fourth opinions, went to the best places in Chicago, and he passed away 4 years later. And again, back in 19, at that time, if you're young and had prostate cancer, that was a bad thing. You were going to probably die.
Yeah.
Milken, who was my first boss from Drexel, also developed prostate cancer. And what he did what my dad did. He went to 3-4 doctors, but he
Mm-hmm.
also to save his own life, built it like a venture capital fund. So he put $250,000 into this crazy idea, 2 million here, 3 million here, 500,000 here for himself, up to $100 million. And because of Michael Milken, you, I, and all the male listeners will die with, but not of, prostate cancer. Fast forward 30 years, you look at, irrespective of what you think of Bill Gates, I would argue he did more for COVID than the U.S. government. Eric Lefkowski was the founder of Groupon. He started Tempest. He didn't start Tempest to make money. He started Tempest because his wife had breast cancer, and he didn't like the data, and he wanted to help his wife. As a result of that, a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company took place. Sergey Brin has a predisposition for pancreatic cancer. Is he going to solve it? I don't know, but I put my money on him rather than the American Cancer Society. So I don't think it's a panacea, but I do think that family offices, because everybody's been touched by something. I've been touched by prostate cancer from my father. My mom's got dementia. We've got other issues in our family. These are issues that are important to me. I don't think you can run a philanthropy exactly like a business, but I do think that a lot of these real world problems, it's not going to get solved by the government, and it's not going to get solved by corporate. I think it's going to get solved by these entrepreneurs who've been touched by something. It could be diabetes, it could be whatever it is. So that's kind of my North Star, and that's really my purpose right now. That's really what I try to focus on. And I think philanthropy, again, you can't run a philanthropy exactly like a business, but you can run it more like a business. Denise Illich is a close friend. They own Little Caesars. They helped rebuild Detroit along with Dan Gilbert. Her comment was, you can't run it exactly like a business, but you need to run it more like a business, because most philanthropies are not run well. So I think we're at an inflection point where a lot of these real world problems are going to get solved from these real wealthy people, which are called family offices.
And so when you look at the work that you're doing with family offices, how much of that is based on a philanthropic goal as opposed to just, doing deals with private equity and strategic purchasers?
Well, the vast majority of time I spend is on making money, is on doing the deals. That's where I spend most of my time. Having said that, I'm involved in some philanthropies where I think I can make a difference. And so while I spend more time doing that, my passion and what I really love doing, and I think how it's going to play out is, initially it was almost 100% trying to make money and almost very little philanthropically. And then as I've gotten older and have maybe a few more resources, I think that's changed. I think it'll continue to change. And in an ideal world, I'd love to be if it were up to me, I'd love to be 100% philanthropy and 0% investing. I'm not there yet, but that's what my goal is.
Yeah. And how do you get there, Ron? Like, what do you need to do personally? What do you need to let go of or teach someone else to do? Or like,
part of it is, I'm pretty good about this, but part of it is everyone has an ego, and an ego is a double-edged sword. I mean, ego is like, you want to have an ego and you need an ego to do well, et cetera. But it's also a bad thing. And I think that you have to be able to think who you are, be able to transcend your own ego, and just say, you know what, enough is enough, whatever that means. And it means different things to different people. And I make no judgments on anybody. It's finding out your core values and where you're at. So I don't know that when I get to level X, that at that point I'm going to be able to say, okay, I'm going to now stop investing and only do philanthropy, which is my ultimate goal. But I'm getting just more and more. I'm getting more involved in philanthropy, and even though I'm still doing more work investing right now, it's changing, and I think that will continue to change. So I don't know the answer to your question on if there's going to be an epiphany where I'm going to say, okay, now it's going to happen. I don't think that's how life works. I just think it just happened gradually, and then when the time is right.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, much earlier in the process, I'm working with a lot of founders who they begin to really get that their business is most valuable when they are 100% unnecessary to it. And that's a real threat. Talk about ego. It's like, well, what do I do if I'm not, leading the company on a day-to-day basis? Or what do I do if I haven't built myself into this whole operation as essential?
And what's interesting is what I found is I've had friends who sold their company. They've always wanted to do well, and they sold their company for a lot of money. The day after they sold their company, they were miserable. And
yeah, exactly.
It intuitively doesn't make sense, but it has to do with purpose. It has to do with relevance. It has to do with a whole bunch of different things, which are way above my pay grade. But I think that I've seen it. And, like I said, if there were a direct correlation between wealth and happiness and fulfillment and living a self-actualized life, just get as rich as possible. But there's not. It's different with everybody.
Yeah, that you and I have both. You're more involved in Tiger 21 than I have, but I've spoken at an event and had some interactions with clients who have been in it. And I spoke at it was a group of Tiger 21 groups in Colorado, and talking about like kind of meaning and purpose and that post exit thing, right? And the words that kept coming up in the group that I talked to were valley of despair. Like I got the check, and now I'm uninvolved, unimportant. No one gives a shit what I think anymore. And like, what do I do now? Who am I now? Yeah. And it's not a problem that you can talk to many people about.
Right. Because they think you're bragging and you're not. There's a book by Arthur Brooks, which is called, I'm blanking on the book, From Strength to Strength.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like the second chapter of your life. I mean, the first chapter, you're trying to accumulate, you're trying to get successful, etc. The second chapter of your life, which could be even more fulfilling than the first chapter, even though you're older, is figuring out like the purpose and the meaning behind everything. Because when you're younger, you've got blinders on and you're focused on whatever your field is. And I get that. And you kind of need to be.
Yeah.
But once you get to the second, from strength to strength, and I think under the second mountain, there's another book written about that. It's life evolves and you change, and you're different today than you were when you were 40, than when you were 30, when you were 20. And to me, I'm happier today than I've ever been in my life. Now, most people look at it like, oh, I wish you were back in college. And I'm not, I love college. I'm not saying I didn't love college, but I'm just saying that they turn 40 or they turn 50 and like, oh my God, my joints hurt, my whatever. I just think that, yes, there are certain things physically that are going to deteriorate because that's we're but there's certain things, at least to me, like I find every year has been better than the previous year. I can't run as fast as I could. I'm not as good at tennis. I'm not as good at skiing. I'm not as good as a lot of different things. But I look at things from a different perspective, and I think there's a certain amount of hopefully, as you grow older, you gain a certain amount of wisdom. And to me, I would much rather if I know I've got two beautiful daughters, Zoe and Bella, and they're 22 and 25. Nothing in the world makes me happier than if I know exactly something that makes them is meaningful for them, and then being able to provide that for them, versus me receiving, I get a gift or something from somebody else.
Right.
It's so much better to give. And I think that mentality goes with philanthropy too. When I've made a great investment, yes, I feel good about that. And not all the investments turn out. Probably more turn out than don't. But I don't feel, if I buy it for $100 and sell it for $300, I feel good because it was a smart decision. But I don't feel good when I am involved, even if I'm working at a soup kitchen during one day or whatever. I feel good. And it's different for everybody. Like my definition of happiness and fulfillment is different than yours and different from everybody's. But you really have to, I think you have to think a lot, and you really have to think about everybody's unique. Everyone's a unique individual, and life, goes by like that. So you just have to really think about, take time. And, I remember I just finished the book, The Anxious Generation by Dan Haidt.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
actually speaking to him later today. The amount of stress, anxiety, depression, and suicide amongst 18 to 25-year-olds is off the charts. Now, when I was 18 to 25, you're an idiot, you're in college, you're drinking, you're doing whatever it is. That was a fun period. I think it's hard to be a kid right now because in this book they trace it back to the phone and social media
Social media. Yeah.
and all this stuff. But um, I think that at the end of the day, I just playing catch with my brothers is just like I loved doing that. It didn't accomplish anything, but being present again, and that's something that I'm decent at. I'm not great at, but I'm getting better and I'm working harder at it. Because most of us spend most of our time focusing on worrying about the future or bemoaning things we did in the past, and not just being present for us, for our family, whatever. And even when I'm doing my taxes, maybe not taxes, but even when I'm doing something that I don't really enjoy, um,
Yeah.
if I'm fully immersed in it, I feel good. I do.
Yeah. 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 One of the things that I end up doing with a lot of my clients is just taking, and I did it with a group of founders about a month ago, is just taking 2 days to just completely unplug, pull back, get away from that day to day, the phone buzzing, and it's amazing what comes up. And it's things that sound simple or even simplistic, but really meaningful when you're actually able to see it at the level that you just described. It's like, oh yeah, when I'm immersed in stuff and when I'm not making up stuff in the future to be scared of or making up reasons why, I'm the victim to my past or whatever. It's just like I think we get much more able to do that as we get older.
Yeah, I mean, we have a thing at our house where if you call 3 times, it's an emergency. So no matter what,
Mm,
if I get 3 phone calls right now, I'm going to end this podcast.
yeah.
So I don't know, this was maybe my daughter was maybe 7 at the time, and I'd never gotten the 3 calls, but I get the 3 call,
Mm.
I get the third call, and I'm in the meeting with a very large multi-billion-dollar family office, and I was just developing a relationship with them. And I got a call, I ignored it. I got a call, I ignored it. I got a third call. It was the first time. And I just said to them, I'm sorry, I've got to leave. There's an emergency. And so I called my daughter, and my heart, is she in the hospital, whatever. And she's like, Daddy, what are the 5 most important things in life? I'm like, okay, what's the emergency? She's like, no, I've got to finish this project for school, and I've got to. So, I'm just like, I take a deep breath.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. I come home. I'm like, first of all, Bella, it's not an emergency. I explained to her what an emergency is, and I felt
Mm-hmm.
good. And then she just said, "What tell me." So I worked with her on it. So for her, she was 7 years old. It was being a good listener, being a good sister, being a good daughter, having a lot of candy, and I don't remember what the fifth thing was, but that
Yeah.
was important to her, right? And that
Yeah.
is only a kid can do. She flips it. She goes, well, "What are your 5?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Whatever." I don't know. And then I dropped it. And the next day, as only kids could do, Daddy, I tell you my 5. What are your
What?
5?
Yeah. What are your 5? Yeah.
And she did this for like weeks. And I just
Uh-huh.
was ignored. I'm just like, whatever. And then finally she got to me. And I'm like, all right, fine. But rather than just like say, okay, it's A, B, C, D, E, I really gave it some thought. And I took a couple weeks and I talked to my wife about it. And I just said, okay, well, what are my 5, like, if what are candy was I love candy, but that wasn't one of the 5 for me.
Right.
What are the 5 most important things to me? So I thought it through, and I was very thoughtful and deliberate on this. And the 5 I came out with in order, it was love, gratitude, attitude, balance, and laughter. So I think love transcends everything. I think that's the most
Hmm.
important thing in life. So that's number one. Gratitude. I used to think that happy people were grateful, but it's flipped. Grateful
Yeah.
people are happier. And I've read a lot I've read a lot in psychology about this, and there's so many things. I got 20 things right now that suck in my life, as do you, as does most people. I've got 20 things that are phenomenal in my life. And the way we're wired as humans is to think about, the negatives. But
Yeah.
we've got so much to be grateful for. And so I have a gratitude practice, and I try to, and I'm good at it. I'm not perfect at it, but I'm trying to
Hmm.
get better. But I just try to live each day with gratitude. I think it's the most important thing behind love. Your attitude.
Can I stop you right there?
Yeah.
Tell me about your gratitude practice. I think this is really important.
It's not, it just basically, I just think about, I live, I'm on a Zoom, like, this is work. This is not
Yeah.
work. This is not work to me. I enjoy what I'm doing. I've got two beautiful daughters who I love more than anything in the world. I've got an incredible wife. We've been married 29 years, who I love more than anything.
Yeah.
I won the children lottery because my parents, they weren't wealthy, but they gave me unconditional love. And I've got
Yeah.
two brothers who are two of the nicest, best human brother. So, and I've got a friend group. So I, I'm just, I just feel
Yeah.
a lot
And
of
do
gratitude.
you, so I mean, I know some people, they'll they'll journal or they'll take 5 minutes
Yeah.
before bed and just like reflect on all the good things that happened that day. Like, do you have anything specific? I mean, obviously you've got a lot to be grateful for and that comes through, but
I try to take 15 minutes at the beginning of the day and 15 minutes at the end of the day, and
yeah,
really think about it. Like, these three things, you know, we're wired that, okay, this has been a pain in the ass, this part of my day, and you're wired to
right.
focus on that.
We're wired to look for threats. I mean, that's,
Well, otherwise
biologically, yeah,
we
we
would
wouldn't be here.
we wouldn't have gotten out of the caves. But
Yeah.
I think that try to spend 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at night before I go to bed, and then I also during the day I try to check myself as best I can, and
Mm.
I'm good at it. I'm
Mhm.
not great at it, but I
Mhm.
just like I worry about stuff. I think in the
Yeah.
future sometimes I bemoan stuff in the past, but
Yeah.
I try to check myself on it. I'm like, wait a minute, if worrying would help me, I would worry, but it won't.
Right.
So maybe what if it would add value? I would say I should worry, but it doesn't add value. So I think a lot, and take I try to I used to never spend much time alone. I was social, and I always wanted to be around people. As I'm getting older, I like to spend more time alone and just doing
Mhm.
like the to me like the best weekend sometimes is not going to a great party Friday and a great party Saturday and a brunch on Sunday. It's it's Friday afternoon. I look at my calendar and we have nothing scheduled. I love
Uh-huh.
that.
Yeah.
I would have hated that before.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Okay. I didn't want to, like, I know, I think the next one was attitude, but thank you for being willing to drill down a little bit.
I think attitude is just it's super important. I mean, we've got there's a woman, my our cleaning lady who cleans our
Uh-huh.
house is the most upbeat person that I've ever met. She's been through breast cancer, she's been through divorce, she's cleaning houses, but her attitude is unbelievable. It's infectious. It's contagious.
Yeah.
I go to this one Starbucks, which is 5 minutes further from my house than the closest one, because this one woman who's there is always just in such a good mood. I just think your attitude makes
Wow.
such a big thing. So that is important. Balance is one of the hardest things because how do you live a balanced life? Like
How
I
do you
said,
even define it?
well, it's hard and there's no specific strict definition, I don't think, but I think that you're not going to live a balanced life as an entrepreneur when you're getting started. You can't,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you know that going in. And then just understanding that, yes, you want to make a lot of money and yes, you want to do well in your business, and you want to grow, but understanding with balance, like I'd rather watch. if I could, like, for me, the fact that I was able to watch I've got one daughter who's a great athlete and one daughter who's an okay athlete, but I was able to watch every one of their sporting events. Like,
Mm.
that is really, really important to me. Being there for that. So that the balance is, and then the last one, laughter. The world is so screwed up, and it's just, there's so much bad, I mean, bad stuff going on. I couldn't personally get through life without looking at it through the lens of humor. So, like, I love Bill Maher, I love Monty Python. There's certain
Yeah.
things that are ridiculous, but so those are my five. But it's different for everybody. For some people it's religion. Some people it could be anything. But those were my five, and I thought about it, and I try to live my life with those five and try to understand that every day. And I'm usually pretty good at it, but I'm not always. But I'm getting better.
I want to go back to something you said about worry, because it reminds me of a conversation I had with a founder recently, and he was talking about, for him, it wasn't worry. The word that he used was anxiety. And he asked me, like, how can I, like, why am I so anxious all the time? And I literally said to him, because you think it's helpful.
Yeah.
And so you saw, oh, worry actually isn't helpful.
If it were helpful, I'd worry a lot.
Yeah, but how did you see that? Because I think a lot of people think, at least subconsciously, like, I know it was kind of drilled into me. My mom was incredibly anxious. I saw her worry about everything. And I had a pattern of, like, my go-to was like, well, I need to worry about this because it's important. I need to worry about it, Ron. Like, how did you let go of that?
Because I looked at my life and I said, if even 10% of my worries came to fruition, I'd be miserable. And they didn't.
Yeah.
Most of the worries, they don't. I mean, some do, but most don't. And even just by worrying, it's not productive.
Yeah. Yeah. Like making up stuff catastrophizing, making up stuff to be scared about.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So as other people are listening to this podcast, what should they be thinking about as they get to the point of, oh, I had this event, Joe down the street has offered to start a family office for me. Like, what should they be thinking about at that stage, like from like day one, if day 0 is the exit event and the big check or whatever, day 1 to day 365.
Well,
What should
one,
they be?
don't listen to Joe to start.
Yeah.
I think you need, and well, there really is no playbook. Like right now, there's no book that says you need X amount of dollars to have a family office, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there will be, and we're trying to create that at Booth.
Yeah.
And I'm helping to put together a program in Oxford as well, trying to do that. So that will happen. But what you should do is you should first, if it were me, knowing what I know and seeing what I've seen, just take a couple weeks off and decompress. If you like to go to the beach, go to the beach. If you like to ski, go skiing, and just without any agenda. And then come back, talk to your estate planning attorney and get everything structured, because that's like the foundation of a house. And then talk to an expert on governance and put together a mission statement. Like, okay, you want a family office? Why? What's the point of it? And then succession and next gen. And a lot of families, unfortunately, are really screwed up. And a lot of the families don't make it to second or third or fourth generation, not so much because they're bad investors. Some are, but some are really good investors. It's the governance. And then the amount of lawsuits between siblings and mother to child or grandson to grandfather, it's crazy. And it's just not worth it. So I think you really have to be thoughtful about it. And what I would also do is talk to people who have family offices, who live lives, balanced lives that you not necessarily want to emulate exactly, but like, what did you listen? I mean, we're really good at talking. We're really bad at, and I used to be a really bad listener. I'm a very good listener now. I'm trying to work on it and get better, but I can't learn by talking. I can only learn by listening or reading, and that's what I try to do more and more. So I would just say listen and talk to people.
How do you take care of your kids and not screw them up?
It's a great question. Well, the first thing I do is give them unconditional love. That's the most important thing. I mean, there's nothing in the world I wouldn't do for Zoe or Bella. They're the meaning of my life. I think that you have to, at a young age, you have to instill it in them, because just because mommy or daddy has made a lot of money doesn't mean that you should be the one buying the pizza for all your friends. I mean, and you have to instill that in them, and you have to explain that to them. And with much success comes you need to give back a lot too. And I think that people have to look at it when you're raising your children. It's hard. You want to raise the worst thing you could do is raise an entitled child, and I see it all the time. And some parents think, well, just money it'll solve all problems. If it did, it'll be easier. Then you just make a lot of money, but it doesn't solve all problems. And so I think that you have to look at it through the lens of what's really important to you. You have to look at it through the lens of you want your kid to be. I don't care. I've got one daughter who's going to be in real estate and one daughter who's an artist. They're totally different. They're fields, and I encourage both of them. Now, obviously real estate's more practical from a societal standpoint than art, but I encourage her, and I don't know how it'll play out. She's doing social media for a whiskey brand that Bob, so she was doing some cool things, but I just think you have to understand each person. And also the most important thing is they watch you. If you're rude to the waiter or you treat people who are working for you or whatever, they see that.
Yeah.
If they see you working hard, they also see that too. So through osmosis, they absorb. So I think a lot of it is really not so much planning, how do I make this kid have gratitude and not being entitled, trying as best you can to do things. Because if I tell my kids don't smoke and I smoke, I'm a complete hypocrite, and they're going to smoke. But if they see me working hard and they see me involved in philanthropies and charities, and they see me hanging out with my friends, joking around and being immature, and I think it rubs off. I think it's through osmosis.
Yeah, I do think we're setting an example for our kids based on how we act, and even like how we act in a restaurant, right? I think that's a great example of just one of those unspoken things that our kids absorb when we're not even thinking they're paying attention.
They pay attention from 6 months on.
Yeah, beautiful. Ron, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks for being willing to go deep. And if people want to find out more about what you do or keep track of what you're up to in the world, what's the best way for them to do that?
I've got a it's familyofficeworldmedia.com. And then I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. So one of those two ways is probably the best to do it.
Awesome. Well, I'll let you go here. Thanks very much for being on the Pick Now podcast. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.